I found out about her affair on a Monday morning. The same day, we were supposed to discuss what kind of couch to buy for the living room. I still don't know what hit harder, the affair itself or the fact that it had lasted longer than our old couch. I've always considered myself a man of habit, not because I was afraid of change, but because I valued predictability. Coffee in the morning, black, no sugar. The route to work, the same one every day. My wife, the same one, or so I thought. We lived together for 15 years. I won't say they were perfect, but they were honest. At least on my side. I didn't check her phone, didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't play detective. I trusted her. That sounds like a confession at a support group now, but back then it felt like a normal foundation for a marriage. Everything broke by accident. The most important things usually do. I opened her laptop to find the washing machine manual. Yes, very romantic. I knew the password, our dog's birthday. That alone should have warned me. The dog died 3 years ago, but the password stayed. Some things live longer than they should. A file was already open. Not messages, not photos. A calendar. Neat, colorful, with recurring events. There were a lot of meetings that strangely didn't match her work schedule. At first, I thought she'd changed jobs and forgotten to tell me. Then I saw the name. The same one. Over and over. For years. It wasn't a punch. More like a slow realization. Like standing under a cold shower and understanding there will be no hot water today. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the laptop. I sat down and read everything. 1 year. 2. 3. Almost 4. Systematic. Organized. Respectful of the schedule. I even thought, if she put that much effort into our relationship, we'd already be writing memoirs. When she came home, I asked how her day was. She said, normal. And that was the most honest thing she said all evening. For her, it was normal. For me, it was the end of one life and the beginning of another, much more interesting one. I didn't tell her I knew. Not because I was scared. I was curious. For years isn't a mistake. It's a project. And every project has logic, structure, and weak points. That night, I didn't sleep well. Not because of pain, because of thoughts. I replayed our life like an old movie. Here we are in the kitchen, laughing. Here, she says she'll be late. Here, I believe her. The scenes suddenly gained a second meaning. Like a director's cut with commentary no one asked for. In the morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. Same man. Not broken. Not humiliated. Just informed. That's a big difference. I always believed revenge was for weak people. For those who can't move on. But with age comes understanding. Revenge comes in many forms. Sometimes it's not about pain. Sometimes it's about truth, delivered at the right moment, to the right people. I wasn't going to destroy her with words. I wasn't going to expose her to everyone at once. I planned something much simpler and much more complicated at the same time, to let her remain herself, but under conditions I would set. The first step was silence. It works better than shouting. She noticed the change on the third day. I became more attentive, calmer, almost kind. That scares people more than aggression. You're different, she said at dinner. We all change, I replied. Again, true. I started taking notes. Not emotions, facts, dates, times, names. I never kept a diary, but life sometimes forces you to learn new genres. This wasn't a novel. It was a report. And somewhere between the entries, I realized something. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted her to see herself the way I saw her. Without filters, without excuses, without me as decoration for her double life. My revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be inevitable. But that's another conversation, and another part of the story. Silence is weight. I learned that in the second week. At first, it felt unnatural, like a stone in your shoe. It doesn't stop you from walking, but it constantly reminds you it's there. I sat across from her at breakfast, listened as she talked about small things, and nodded at the right moments. 15 years of living together teaches you that reflex. She filled the space with words easily. She always had. Silence only frightens people when they're not used to hearing themselves. She started compensating. More stories. More details. She talked about coworkers I'd never met, lunches I didn't ask about, fatigue she used to keep to herself. I noticed how carefully she avoided certain hours. how her voice shifted when specific days of the week came up. Patterns don't disappear when you stop looking at them. They get louder. I didn't change my routine. Same coffee, same drive, same work hours. Predictability is the best camouflage. When people believe nothing has changed, they relax. They stop hiding what they assume you're too blind to notice. At night, after she fell asleep, I opened my notebook. Dates, times, correlations. I wasn't gathering evidence for a courtroom. I was gathering clarity for myself. Those are different things. One is meant to convince others. The other is meant to make sure you never lie to yourself again. Strangely enough, I felt calm. Not happy, not angry. Calm. Like a man who finally understood the rules of a game he'd been losing for years without even knowing he was playing. Of course, I thought about talking to her. Every man in my position does. The scene plays itself out automatically. Accusations, denial, tears, counterattacks. I knew that script. I didn't like the ending. Too much noise. Too many excuses. Too many people walking away, believing whatever makes them most comfortable. I didn't want comfort. I wanted precision. One evening, she asked if something was wrong with me. It was casual, light. The kind of question you ask when you already know the answer, but hope the other person will lie well enough to reassure you. What do you mean? I asked. You're distant. That word again. Distant. People use it when they feel they're losing control, but don't know how. I've just been thinking, I said. About what? About time. That wasn't a lie. Time had become fascinating. Almost 4 years of it, repurposed, redirected, taken from our marriage and invested somewhere else. She smiled, relieved. Philosophical husbands are safe husbands. Thinking about time sounds harmless, almost noble. That night, I made my first real decision. I wasn't going to rush this. Revenge, if you want to call it that, doesn't work when it's driven by emotion. Emotion burns fast and leaves ash behind. I wanted something cleaner, something that would unfold on its own. Like gravity. No push required. I started asking small questions. Not about him. Never about him. About her. What did she want next year? Did she still like the house? Had she ever thought about real change? At first, she answered easily. Then more carefully. People sense a shift in the balance of power, even when they can't name it. I watched her adjust in real time, trying to speak to the version of me she remembered. That version no longer existed. One day, while she was out, I opened the closet and looked at her clothes. I don't know why. Maybe I expected disorder. There wasn't any. Everything was neatly arranged. That's when it hit me. Lies don't always look chaotic. Sometimes they smell like clean laundry. I closed the door and laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. The amount of effort people put into maintaining a lie when telling the truth would be simpler if only they were brave enough. I wasn't brave. Not in the classic sense. I wasn't leaving yet. I wasn't confronting her. I was doing something harder. I was staying. Staying long enough to understand the shape of the life I'd been living. Staying long enough to decide exactly how I wanted this chapter to end. Not in anger, not in chaos, but with balance restored. I began preparing without drawing attention. Separate accounts. Quiet changes. Small steps that looked insignificant to anyone who didn't know where to look. This wasn't preparation for war. It was preparation for an exit. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, she lived a double life right in front of me. Now I was living one too, but mine was built on truth. By the end of the second week, I knew one thing for sure. She still thought she was ahead of me. And that was exactly where she needed to be. Because the biggest shocks in life don't come from explosions. They come from quiet realizations. And I was already counting down to hers. By the third week, I stopped thinking of this as a marriage problem. That was the first real shift. Marriage problems are emotional. They involve fixing, forgiving, negotiating. This was none of those. This was a system that had been running in parallel to my life for years, and I had finally gained access to the control panel. Once you see it that way, things get easier. I began treating my days like controlled experiments. Same inputs, same behavior, different observation. I paid attention to what changed when I said nothing, when I asked neutral questions, when I wasn't where she expected me to be. She liked predictability. Most people do. It makes lying efficient. So I disrupted it quietly. I came home earlier one day without explanation. Not dramatically. No announcement. Just earlier. She hesitated for half a second when she saw me. Barely noticeable, but I noticed. People who have nothing to hide don't recalibrate that fast. Another day, I stayed late. Didn't text. Didn't call. When I got home, she asked where I'd been. Work, I said. She nodded too quickly. Relief masquerading as indifference. That's when I understood something important. She wasn't worried about losing me. She was worried about losing control of the narrative. There's a difference. I started seeing how much of our relationship had been built around managing perception. Mine, his, everyone's, the dinners, the timing, the casual affection deployed strategically, like punctuation in a sentence meant to sound sincere. Once you see the structure, you can't unsee it. One evening, she suggested a weekend trip. Nothing extravagant. Just a reset, she said. A change of scenery. People always suggest trips when they sense something slipping. They confuse movement with progress. I agreed. Not because I wanted to go. Because I wanted to see what she'd do with the idea. She planned it quickly. Too quickly. As if she'd been waiting for an excuse. I let her. I watched. I said yes to everything. Dates. Hotel. Restaurant reservations. I was cooperative in a way that made her relax. That was the point. The trip itself was fine. That's the best word for it. Fine like a well-lit waiting room. Polite smiles. Familiar touches. A performance we both knew by heart, though only one of us knew the script was ending. At dinner, she reached for my hand. Held it longer than usual. I miss us, she said. I believed that she believed it, which made it worse. I'm right here, I replied. Again, true. Just incomplete. Back in the hotel room, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The name on the screen was enough. Same name. Same certainty. Same absence of fear. That was the moment I felt something close to gratitude. Not for the affair, but for the clarity. People think betrayal breaks you. Sometimes it does. Other times, it strips away the noise. It shows you exactly where you stand and where everyone else is standing in relation to you. I stood alone, and I was finally okay with that. When we got home, I began moving pieces more deliberately. Legal consultations framed as financial planning. Conversations phrased as hypotheticals. Questions that sounded like curiosity, but were really calibration. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and chose not to. People often sense the ground shifting and decide denial is safer than adjustment. I wasn't cruel. That part matters to me. I didn't punish her with silence or affection. I didn't withdraw or cling. I remained consistent, measured, present. That unsettled her more than anger ever could. One night, she asked if I still loved her. It was late. The lights were off. That kind of question always comes in the dark. Yes, I said. That was the last time I lied. Not because I want to hurt her. Because I was done hurting myself. By the end of the third week, I had stopped imagining how this would end. I didn't need to. The ending was already forming, piece by piece, consequence by consequence. I wasn't planning a scene. I was preparing a realization. And realizations, when they arrive fully formed, tend to change everything. Especially for the person who never saw them coming. By the fourth week, she thought things had settled. That was the mistake. People confuse calm with safety. They see routine return and assume the storm passed. In reality, calm is often just the pause between decisions. I wasn't waiting for clarity anymore. I already had it. What I was waiting for was alignment. The moment when everything I knew, everything I'd prepared, would make sense to act on. She started acting normal again. Not our normal, something newer, softer, more deliberate. She cooked more, left notes, touched my arm when she spoke, as if reminding herself where to place her hand. It wasn't manipulation in the dramatic sense. It was maintenance, like tightening bolts on a structure you're afraid might collapse if you stop paying attention to it. I let her. I thanked her for dinner. I smiled at the notes. I returned the touch. Consistency makes people comfortable. Comfortable people stop checking exits. At work, I finalized things. Paperwork, timelines, quiet confirmations that didn't leave fingerprints. I didn't feel clever doing it. I felt precise. like a mechanic tightening the last screw before closing the hood. One afternoon, she asked about the future. Not vaguely this time. Directly. "Where do you see us in a year?" she said. It wasn't curiosity. It was a test. I took my time answering. Not because I didn't know, but because pauses make people reveal what they're afraid of. "I see things being simpler," I said. She nodded slowly. Too slowly. "Processing." "Simple is good," she replied. People always agree with simplicity when they think it benefits them. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because things were improving, but because they were clarifying. Uncertainty is exhausting. Direction isn't. I stopped checking my notes every night. I didn't need to anymore. The pattern was complete. No loose ends. No unanswered questions. I knew enough. What surprised me was the absence of rage. I'd expected it to arrive late, like delayed shock. It never did. Anger requires hope. The hope that things could have been different if someone had chosen differently. I was past that. I wasn't angry at her for what she did. I was done with what it revealed. One morning, as she left for work, she kissed me longer than usual. "For no reason," she said. I watched her walk out the door and realized something important. She still thought affection could reset the clock. That realization didn't hurt. It confirmed. That evening, I made the final internal shift. The one that matters more than plans or paperwork. I stopped thinking of her as my wife. Not with bitterness. Not with contempt. Just with accuracy. She was a person I lived with. A person I knew well. A person whose story no longer intersected with mine beyond logistics. Once you make that shift, everything becomes easier. Conversations lose their edge. Expectations dissolve. You stop reacting and start observing. She felt it. "You feel far away again," she said. "I never moved," I replied. That was the truth she wasn't ready for. By the end of the 4th week, everything was in place. Not the confrontation. Not the fallout. The understanding. This wasn't going to end with shouting, or tears, or explanations. It was going to end with awareness. And awareness, when it arrives late and all at once, tends to be devastating. Not because it hurts, but because it can't be undone. I wasn't preparing to expose her. I was preparing to remove myself. And the shock wouldn't come from what I said. It would come from what I no longer needed to say at all. The 5th week didn't come with fireworks. Nothing ever does when something's actually over. There was no big moment. No argument. No dramatic realization. Just a quiet click somewhere inside me, like a lock turning. Once it did, I knew there was no going back. I stopped waiting. That was the shift. Up until then, I'd still been watching, measuring, paying attention. But by now, there was nothing left to figure out. No missing pieces. No, maybe I misunderstood. The picture was complete, and it wasn't complicated. People don't change when things are comfortable. They just get better at managing things. And she had gotten very good at that. She took my calm as acceptance, my silence as forgiveness. A lot of people think if you're not yelling, you're not serious. Especially when it comes to men. They mistake restraint for weakness. I didn't bother correcting her. One night, she poured us both a drink. That alone was unusual. She raised her glass like we were celebrating something. "To us," she said. I raised mine too. "To clarity," I said. She smiled. Didn't ask what I meant. People rarely question words they assume are working in their favor. That was the night I moved into the guest room. No fight. No explanation. I just did it. The next morning, she asked if everything was okay. "Yeah," I said. And it was. Distance feels different when you choose it. It's not cold. It's clean. From that point on, I started pulling away the way you untangle a knot. Slow, careful, no jerking. I stopped sharing my thoughts. Stopped checking her mood before speaking. Stopped adjusting myself to keep things smooth. She noticed. Of course she did. "You seem more independent," she said one evening. "I am," I said. That word hit harder than I expected. Independence scares people who are used to access. I started making plans for myself. Weekends away. Long walks. Dinners alone. No explanations. Not to punish her, just to remind myself that my life still worked without orbiting around hers. She tried to slide back in gently. Suggestions. Invitations. Those casual, "we should" sentences. I said no. Politely. Politeness can be brutal when someone's expecting emotion. By the end of the 5th week, I understood the real truth of it all. She wasn't waiting for forgiveness. She was waiting to see if she'd gotten away with it. That's when whatever softness I had left drained out of me, not replaced with anger. With certainty, I didn't want revenge that involved shouting or public scenes. I wanted something quieter, something that lingered. I wanted her to feel the loss not as punishment, but as absence, because absence forces people to face what they actually valued. I finished planning my exit. Dates, logistics, conversations already practiced in my head, stripped down to what actually mattered. No debates, no history lessons, no rehashing. That part was done. That night, turning off the light in the guest room, I realized something that almost made me smile. She still thought she had time. She didn't know that time was the one thing I'd already taken back. And once a man takes his time back, everything else follows. The 6th week was when things finally started to tilt. Not outwardly. Outwardly, everything still looked fine. If someone had dropped by unannounced, they would have seen a quiet couple sharing space, being polite, functioning. That's the dangerous part. How normal the end can look from the outside. Inside, though, I was already gone. I stopped pretending we were working through something. That story was finished. What replaced it wasn't anger or grief. It was detachment. And detachment changes how you move, how you talk, how long you pause before answering. She felt it more clearly now. People always do eventually. One night, while we were both in the kitchen, she asked the question she'd been circling for weeks. "Are you leaving me?" There it was. No softness, no humor, just fear trying to sound calm. I didn't answer right away. Not to punish her, just because I don't rush honesty anymore. "I'm leaving the situation," I said. "That's not the same thing." She stared at me like she was trying to translate a foreign language. "So what does that mean?" she asked. "It means I'm done pretending we're the same people we were," I said. "And I'm done pretending I don't know what I know." Her face changed instantly. Not shock, recognition. That's the thing people don't talk about. When you finally say it out loud, the other person almost always knows exactly what you mean. They've just been hoping you wouldn't say it. "You've been acting strange for weeks," she said quietly. "I've been acting honest," I replied. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" That almost made me laugh. "Because you weren't telling the truth either," I said. "So I figured I'd let you live in the version you chose until I was done living in it with you." There was no yelling, no crying, just a long silence filled with things we both understood too well to explain. Finally, she asked, "What happens now?" That was the easiest question she'd asked all night. "Now," I said, "we stop lying about what this is." I told her I'd be moving out. Gave her timeline. Clear. Simple. No room for interpretation. I didn't accuse her. Didn't list details. I didn't need to. The facts weren't up for debate, and neither was my decision. She tried to apologize. I stopped her gently. "This isn't about apologies," I said. "It's about consequences." That word landed hard. People think consequences are loud. Arguments, lawyers, ruined reputations. Sometimes they are, but the ones that actually change people are quiet. They show up later when no one's watching. She asked if there was someone else. "No," I said. "I just chose myself." That answer hurt her more than any accusation could have. By the end of the conversation, she looked smaller. Not weak, just exposed. Like someone who finally realized the ground under them wasn't solid after all. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because things were resolved, but because they were real. The shock hadn't fully hit her yet. I could see that. She was still processing, still thinking, and the 7th week was when it really landed for her. Not all at once. More like a slow leak she couldn't find. I was still there, technically. Still moving boxes. Still tying up loose ends. Still polite. That's what confused her. People expect anger when something ends. Or sadness. Or begging. Politeness feels like a trick when you're used to chaos. She kept trying to talk. Not about us. Not directly. About logistics. About random memories. About things that didn't matter anymore. "So, remember that place we went on our anniversary? Do you still want the bookshelf? We should probably talk about how to tell people." I answered calmly. Briefly. Like someone closing tickets, not reopening cases. That's when the panic started showing through. She began hovering. Staying in the same room longer than necessary. asking questions she already knew the answers to, watching me pack like she expected to see something change my mind. It didn't. What she didn't understand, yet, was that the loss had already happened. I wasn't leaving her now. I'd left weeks ago. This was just the physical part catching up to the emotional one. One night she said, "You're acting like I don't exist." I looked at her and said, "I'm acting like you're not the center of my decisions anymore." That one hit. People can handle being hated. They can't handle being irrelevant. She started crying then. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet, confused kind. The kind that comes when someone realizes the rules have changed and no one bothered to warn them. "I didn't think it would end like this," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's the point." She wanted closure. A conversation that wrapped things up neatly. A version of events she could live with. I didn't give her that. Not out of cruelty, out of honesty. Closure is something people ask for when they want relief without accountability. What she got instead was silence. Not the angry kind, the final kind. By the end of the week, I'd moved most of my things out. The house already felt different. Echoey, like a place that remembered being full but wasn't anymore. She walked through it like she was waiting for me to appear behind her, say this was all a misunderstanding, that we could still fix things. I didn't. On my last night there, she asked one final question. "Did any of it matter to you?" I thought about that longer than any question she'd asked before. "Yes," I said. "That's why I couldn't stay." She nodded slowly. I don't think she understood, but she felt it. When I closed the door behind me, there was no dramatic moment. No relief. No sadness. Just a sense of alignment. Like my life had finally caught up with the truth. The real shock wasn't that I left. It was that I didn't look back. And that's when absence stopped being a concept for her and started being something she had to live inside. Week 8 was quieter than I expected. Not peaceful, just quiet in that hollow way, like when you shut off a machine that's been running for years and your ears keep waiting for the noise to come back. New place. Boxes still half open. Clothes living out of bags. I didn't rush any of it. Rushing feels like panic, and I wasn't panicking. I was settled, even if the place wasn't. She started texting again. At first it was harmless stuff. Practical. "Did you take the charger? Some mail came for you. Let me know if you need anything." I replied when it made sense. Short answers. No extras. That should have been enough. It wasn't. A few days later, the messages shifted. Longer. Slower. Less about things and more about feelings, like she was testing how much space she still had. She wrote, "I've been thinking a lot. I didn't realize how much I relied on you. I miss how stable everything was." That last one stuck. Not me. Stable. People miss stability the way they miss electricity, only after it's gone. I didn't respond. Not to make a point. Just because there wasn't anything honest I could say back. Silence was the cleanest option. A mutual friend mentioned she'd been asking about me. Casual questions passed along like small talk. "Is he okay? Is he seeing anyone? Does he hate me?" That one made me pause. Hate would have made more sense to her. Hate keeps you relevant. I didn't hate her. That surprised me a little. Hate still keeps a line attached. What I felt was looser than that. Like untying a knot instead of cutting it. One night, she called. I stared at the phone for a second. I already knew how it would go. I answered anyway. Her voice sounded different. Less controlled. Like she wasn't reading from anything this time. "I just wanted to hear your voice," she said. I didn't jump in. If you give people a second, they usually tell you what they really mean. "I didn't think it would feel this empty," she added. "That's what happens when a structure's gone," I said. She asked if we could meet. Coffee. A walk. Just to talk things through. I said no. Not harshly. Not emotionally. Just no. "I'm not the guy for that anymore," I told her. She went quiet. Then cried a little. Not dramatic. Just tired sounding. Like someone finally realizing the door wasn't stuck. It was closed. After we hung up, I sat there for a while. Not sad. Not relieved. Just clear. This is the part nobody warns you about. The echo phase. When you're done, but the sound of it keeps bouncing around in someone else's life. You don't fix that. You don't manage it. You don't go back inside to soften it. I started sleeping better. Eating better. Thinking straight again. My days felt bigger. Less crowded. I wasn't carrying anyone else's emotional balance anymore. That's when it really sank in. The shock wasn't the breakup. The shock was realizing it wasn't temporary. For her. For me, permanent felt like relief. And once relief shows up, you stop replaying things. You just keep moving forward, quietly, on your own terms. Week 9 was when other people started finding out. Not because I announced anything. I didn't. I hate announcements. They invite opinions. Things just surfaced. Someone saw me in a different part of town. Someone noticed she was alone at a gathering she never showed up to alone before. Someone asked a question, and someone else answered it wrong. And then the truth did what it always does. It spread without asking permission. That's when her panic really kicked in. Not the quiet kind this time. The practical fear. The kind that shows up when reputation and control start slipping at the same time. She texted again. Not emotional. Strategic. We should probably agree on what we're telling people. I don't want things getting misunderstood. I think it's fair we present this the same way. That almost made me laugh. Same way. After 4 years of separate stories. I didn't answer. A few days later, she showed up where she knew I'd be. Coffee place near my office. Same one I'd been going to for years. That wasn't an accident. She looked put together. Too put together. Like armor. We need to talk, she said. No, we don't, I said. Calm. Not rude. Her jaw tightened. That was new. She wasn't used to being blocked by politeness. People are asking questions, she said. I don't want this turning into something ugly. That depends, I said, on what you think ugly means. She didn't like that. I just think we owe each other some respect, she said. I took a sip of my coffee before answering. Gave it the time it deserved. Respect would have been honesty, I said. What you're asking for now is coordination. That landed. She went quiet, then tried another angle. You're acting like I don't matter. No, I said. I'm acting like what you do doesn't affect my decisions anymore. That was the moment her face changed. Not sad, not angry, scared, because this wasn't about love anymore. It was about exposure, about realizing she no longer had a say in how the story ended or how it was told. I stood up. I'm not going to badmouth you, I said, but I'm also not going to lie for you. If people ask me, I'll tell them the truth. Calmly, briefly, and then I'll move on. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then closed it. She finally understood there was nothing to negotiate. That's the thing about quiet exits. They don't leave room for spin. After that, the messages stopped. I heard through the usual channels that she was having a hard time, that she didn't see this coming, that she never thought I'd actually walk away. That part stuck with me. She thought I was reacting. She didn't realize I'd been deciding. By the end of week 9, my life had settled into something solid. Not exciting, not dramatic, just mine. Mornings without tension, evenings without explanations, plans that didn't require approval. And somewhere in the background, I knew the real shock had finally hit her. Not that I left, not that people knew, but that I was gone from the story completely and doing just fine without a role in hers. That's when consequences stop being theoretical and start being permanent. By week 10, nothing new was happening. That's how I knew it was done. No messages, no surprise calls, no friends checking in just to see how she's doing. The noise burned itself out. What was left wasn't emptiness. It was space. My space. My days settled into a rhythm that didn't require effort. Wake up, coffee, work, gym, dinner if I felt like it, sleep when I was tired. No explanations, no negotiations, no mental math about someone else's mood. People expect endings to be loud. Lawyers, fights, blame. Sometimes that's how it goes. But the kind that actually sticks is quiet. It just rearranges your life and moves on. I heard things about her eventually. Why? She's been struggling. She didn't think you'd actually leave. She never meant for it to go that far. That last one almost made me laugh. For years doesn't happen by accident. I didn't correct anyone. Didn't defend myself. Didn't explain. The truth didn't need my help. It was doing fine on its own. What surprised me wasn't that she lost me. It was that she lost control. I never exposed her. Never raised my voice. Never tried to win anyone over. I didn't need to. I just stepped out and let the gap speak for itself. Turns out, that's what shook people the most. Men are expected to react, to explode, to fall apart, to demand answers. I was fine with that. One night, Sid, I wouldn't. Not because I handled everything perfectly. Not because I but because I didn't betray myself trying to save Psalm. That's the part that matters. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I walked away clean. There was no scene, no final speech, no moment she could replay and argue with. Just a man who stopped participating, and that stayed with her longer than anything I could have said. As for me, I moved on, quietly, completely, like a man who finally got his time back and didn't waste it explaining.